Oh, we will start. Welcome, welcome everyone to the Manhattan Community Meeting. On behalf of Bart Swartz and the Federal Monitor team, we want to say thank you for your attendance and participation tonight. Manhattan residents are our VIPs and will be first in line to provide comments and feedback during our Q&A session later in the agenda. So thank you, Manhattan, and to all the residents represented tonight. We appreciate your time. So we are recording tonight's meeting, which is being live streamed and saved on our YouTube channel. Also, we have Lindsay Lopez, our Spanish interpreter, on the line with us. So if you prefer Spanish translation, please go to the bottom of your screen and select interpretation and click the option to listen in Spanish. My name is Floretta Hudson, and I'm happy to be your moderator for tonight. Let's quickly walk through tonight's agenda. We will have opening remarks by the NYCHA Federal Monitor, Bart Swartz, followed by a monitorship report by Deputy Monitor Dan Burnell. We are pleased to introduce updates from CCOP Chairman Danny Barber, followed by New York City Fire Department's Battalion Chief Michael Thompson, NYCHA's Special Counsel Manoush Tebedijad, and NYCHA's Manager of Resident Participation and Civic Engagement, Samantha Rogers. Then we move to the most important session of the evening, our Q&A discussion, starting with Manhattan residents and then all boroughs. We encourage you to use the chat feature to tell us if you would like to speak to the Federal Monitor team. Patricia Gambale and Chase Stanford are behind the scenes waiting to respond to your chat messages. They'll get you lined up and move into the meeting room where you can show your screen and speak to us. And finally, we will complete tonight's agenda with closing remarks by Bart Swartz. So without further delay, let's get started with opening remarks by the Federal Monitor, Bart Swartz. On to you, Bart.
Thank you, Floretta, and welcome to everyone this evening. As you know, we're having these community meetings and rotating from borough to borough. So we will continue to do that for the coming year for sure. I'm going to make very brief remarks because we want to leave as much time as possible for the questions that you may have. So I'll just cover a couple of things, and then I'm going to ask Dan Burnell to go into a little more detail on some things that we think will be of interest to you. So the two issues I wanted to cover now are follow up on the ERAP and rent arrears issues and where that finally worked out when the state got its budget. And you may hear some numbers that are a little different from what I'm going to give you. I got these numbers directly from NYCHA, from their CFO's office. I'm sure they're accurate. I think if you hear different numbers, it may be because in some they try to value vouchers, or vouchers are included. There may be other things. So I think these are I'm confident these are reliable numbers that that NYCHA's given us. So first, the state budget provides $135 million for capital spending. Separately, $128 million in ERAP funding to cover the NYCHA's backlog applications. You could think of that more as operations funding as opposed to capital funding. And then 35 million more, which goes directly to NYCHA, not through the ERAP program, but I think technically directly to NYCHA, but also to reduce the rent arrears. And also you could think of that as capital. So those three numbers add up to just a bit under $300 million, $298 million, of which 135 million is capital. And a lot of people work very hard to achieve these results and to get money for NYCHA, which could be both operations and capital. So the second thing I wanted to address is something I've talked to before, both in community meetings and in CAC meetings, and they continue to be good numbers and of interest to everyone, which is why I'm going to go through them again today, but I'll do it very, very quickly. This has to do with the ventilation and duct cleaning project. And I have to say, we as a monitor team work very hard to get NYCHA to do this and do it correctly. And the NYCHA team approached it the same way. They were very dedicated to making this work, to do it as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible. And that's how it got done. And got done. We had to change the schedule a little bit. They needed a little more time, but some of that had to do with weather and other things. But all in all, they met. They not only met the schedule that we agreed with them, but the work that was done was excellent. And I'm delighted to give you some of the statistics and some of the and the results. So there were 6,200 ventilation fans were installed. Approximately another 2,000 did not need to be installed. They were adequate, maybe had to do some work, but they were working adequately. So that's 8,200 fans. Approximately 73,000 bathroom vents have been cleaned as part of this project. And while I recognize what I'm going to tell you now is not a scientific study, but Omar at NYCHA and we are very confident that the work that I just described was the major contributor to what I'm going to tell you, which is that mold cases, new cases, have been reduced by well over 50%. So that when it was running at a rate of 1,700 plus in mold cases a month, it's now down to about 700. And so we all know this, mold is, of course, is not just the living condition, it also creates health hazards, asthma. Children suffer from this. So this is a terrific result. And I've said in other cases, I also believe that when additional work is done with the bathroom enclosures, which will further reduce the leaks and water leaking into the apartment which has the leak or another apartment which is adjacent to an apartment with the leak, I believe these numbers will come down even more. So it's a dramatic result. So those are the 2 points I wanted to make. I get to decide who gives the good news and who gives the rest. So I've covered what I think is good news. The truth is there's a lot of good news, and I'm going to give Dan now a chance to talk about a couple of things or more that we're working on and the results of those efforts. Dan?
Thanks, Bart. So in the next week or two, I expect that Bart will be issuing our next Monitor quarterly report, which is going to focus on 2 main areas. The first is the focus is on safety and outlining a proposal that we recently made to NYCHA. And the second is kind of an update on elevators. So with regard to the safety proposal, a few weeks ago, as I said, we made a kind of a formal proposal to NYCHA's chief operating officer and followed it up with a memo kind of outlining things in writing for her and NYCHA's consideration and what we think would be an affordable step that could be taken by NYCHA that would go a very long way to improving safety and security conditions at the developments. On our call is Fred Baldino. He's been on this, I think he's been on every single one of these community calls. And his team, all of whom are former detectives, have been out at the developments even during COVID since the start of the monitorship, and have really gotten to know not only the physical condition of the developments, but also developed relationships with residents and staff alike. And one of the things that they've heard, that as much as important as any of the pillar areas, which of course are heating, elevators, waste management, pests, the eradication of lead and mold, is for residents and staff, is that safety and security concerns at the development are right up there. And while there have been some progress in every pillar area since the start of the monitorship, we feel very strongly that the same cannot be said for safety conditions, and that what is needed is really a very new strategy and new thinking in order to start to turn that around. Not that NYCHA hasn't made efforts and taken steps to do that, including, of course, the appointment of Chief Secreto to run the Office of Safety and Security, but that, as I said, a new strategy, new thinking needs to be brought to this. And the proposal that the monitor team has, and this was really developed by Fred and his team, is that every single neighborhood at NYCHA, and there are 30 neighborhoods under the new reorganizational structure, should have its own safety and security technician. This would be a person with a background in law enforcement and or fire safety, someone with experience. Quite frankly, probably any of the field examiners would fit that bill. And certainly in the work that they've done, but that's not what this is about. This is about NYCHA bringing on their own people, and that they would really act as the coordinator and the collaborator for NYCHA on the neighborhood level, both internally with all of the various units within NYCHA, including, of course, the Office of Safety and Security, the neighborhoods and developments, to really provide added support and oversight to make sure that things like broken doors, missing or broken cameras, and other important safety infrastructure have been implemented and maintained, and of course properly used when needed. But also to coordinate with outside agencies, in particular the fire department, the NYPD, local prosecutors when needed, city agencies involved in social services and other things, so that there's better communication and coordination between NYCHA and these other agencies, all to assist in the various aspects of safety and security across NYCHA. So in the report, the kind of the middle part of the report is going to be what we see as the monitor team as the main security and safety concerns across NYCHA. Of course, to this group on this call, you're all too familiar with all these things, but this is a public report that goes out to not just NYCHA and not just residents, but to everyone. So we really want to outline those things, and then to lay out in great detail what we see as both the work that the technicians would be engaged in and what their backgrounds should be, so that they would be more than capable to accomplish these things. So anyway, that's one part of the report. And then the second part has to do with elevators. And again, just about everybody on this call is very aware. I know there are residents who have been at NYCHA for 5, 10, 15, 20 and longer years that are very aware of elevator service. And one of the things that we've seen during the course of the monitorship is kind of a spiraling cycle where there aren't enough staff to both cover outages, responding to outages and making repairs, and also doing preventive maintenance. So of course, what happens is when an outage happens, that has to be the priority, especially if it's a single elevator building, which means that if that elevator is out, there is in fact no elevator service. And so what's going to happen is staff are pulled from doing preventive maintenance to respond to that outage. And so what happens is the maintenance isn't completed. So what we've seen, and of course, the monitor doesn't actually do any maintenance or repairs. We do the analytics. So in our close collaboration with the elevator department in doing the analytics, one of the things our team is focused on, and in fact, there's a chart in the report, is looking at what the actual maintenance has been for each of the elevators. And the thing that we've seen, particularly prior to the monitorship, is that maintenance was not being done on a regular basis. In some cases, it went for months. In other cases, it went for many months without being done. And the cycle continues where less preventive maintenance being performed adds to more outages. Increased outages means that preventive maintenance teams are pulled, more of them are pulled to respond to the outages, and the cycle just keeps going and going and going. So one of the things that we've been doing with the elevator department for the last few years is really focusing on improving maintenance so that elevators are being properly maintained in accordance with NYCHA's policies and procedures with regard to that. And we're seeing dramatic increases in that. It started out with 2 pilots, one at Mott Haven and one at Patterson. And Bob Costello, if you can show the visual. So this is in the report, one of the many visuals. So the Mott Haven pilot started in early 2001 and lasted I think until it was either August or September of 2001. And then the Patterson pilot started in early 2002 and went until the fall of 2002.
2022.
2022. So what we saw was that, and both of these developments, Mott Haven, I think, is about half the size of Patterson and has about half the number of elevators. What ESRD was able to do was try out some new strategies, most of which focused on having dedicated preventive maintenance teams and making sure that the repair teams were large enough so that they could generally respond to outages so that the maintenance teams could stick to doing the preventive maintenance. And there were some additional things that were also part of the pilots. And what we saw after a couple months was that there was a pretty dramatic decline in outages, as much as and more than 50%. And ESRD has been able to maintain that low level since the pilots were formally concluded. So that's really important. There's obviously a lot more in the report. I just wanted to kind of whet everyone's appetite. So please read the report when it comes out. And I think, Bart, I think that's all I want to say at this point.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I would like to add just a couple of things because they have, first of all, they can't improve all the elevators at the same time. This has to be done over time, but they now have the understanding and the wherewithal to be able to do it with the existing staff. So they go. One of the goals of the monitorship was to get the most out of the money that is available and to be as efficient as possible. The second thing that I think is an important point is that the use of the analytics is something that can be used in other aspects of the pillars in the HUD agreement, heat being the most obvious, but not only heat. So NYCHA is more and more relying on and understanding the use of analytics. And third, there's been a concentration on making the information that is available for the analytics is more reliable, so that the conclusions reached when going through the data are conclusions that are based on the reliable numbers. And then the last point is that virtually all the information that we work with for these analytics is and has been available to NYCHA on Maximo. And we may have added to it since then, but using Maximo, a great deal of work can be accomplished in terms of the analytical analysis of what's needed, where is it needed, the kind of a triage, get to the places where the most harm is being done and deal with those. So these are one, of course, is called a pilot, but it's really now become the standard in elevators and now going to other developments. And that's the idea here, to make these the standards so that everybody is using the information available and using it effectively. So thank you, Dan. Thank you for that. So I think, I know we do want to move along because I made a commitment at the beginning. We would leave as much time as possible for the questions. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce to everyone the chairman of CCOP, Danny Barber. Danny, welcome.
For having me. First of all, thank you to the Federal Monitor and his team for inviting me to come in to update the resident leadership as well as the team on some of the things that the CCOP has been doing. So Bart touched briefly on the ERAP. So through joint efforts of CCOP working alongside NYCHA, we were able to go to Albany and take a few buses to apply pressure to the governor to let them know how imperative it was to give the monies to public housing for ERAP. It worked. That effort, along with the residents continuing the effort, 2 days later, we went to the governor's office and we did a rally there. I'm glad that the figures that Mr. Schwartz called out, those were the same figures that I was given as well.
Mr. Barber, it looks like his screen is frozen. So we may have to have him reconnect. Wanted to give him just 2 more minutes to see if he could reconnect, but it looks like it's not.
Can you put something in the chat? Maybe he will see it maybe he can see us.
Right, we'll touch base with him.
I had already sent him a note in chat.
Great. We're happy to pick right up with him once he reconnects, and we'll work on that behind the scenes. I know that next on our agenda, we'll just keep moving and
No, there he
I'm
is.
back.
oh,
He's back.
we've
I'm
spoken
back.
to you. There
I'm
you
sorry
go.
about that. My
No
computer
worries.
froze.
No
So
worries.
through the joint efforts, we see that we were able to get the governor and the state legislators to consider NYCHA in the budget. It's not what we may have wanted, but it was something to start, and we could continue conversation to see whatever else we can get down the pipeline. And then the second point that I wanted to make, according to the bylaws that were written for CCOP, inside the bylaws, we spoke of forming committees. So CCOP has been meeting weekly in our weekly meetings, and we come together, and through one of the CCOP members that did a presentation to the whole board, we were able to break down, according to the bylaws, into 10 committees that will roll out first. So each of the chairs were appointed to a committee. We've asked each of the district chairs to go back to the districts and speak to their resident leadership to get participation from the leaders. And once we get to that point, we'll make the necessary introductions to NYCHA and the different departments that the committees fit into so that we can have representation to work closely hand in hand, because as myself being the chair, and the CCOP members as well, where sometimes it gets a bit overwhelming and you don't get to make everything. So now that we're formulating structure that we're able to implement and put others into positions to sit down, to have the conversation, to literally be at the table, and then report back to CCOP to see moving forward on how we need to change, to ask for changes or to push for changes, and to make things work more suitable and beneficial for the residents of public housing. So that's just basically it. I just basically also asked before I turn it back over to Floretta, is if the resident leaders could speak to the district chairs and just find out from them the job descriptions of some of what these committees will be doing. Each chair will have the descriptions of the committees, the different committees, and they can take your name so that we can get the ball going and start doing the work that we were elected as resident leaders to do. Thank you very much, Floretta.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. We're so happy that you were able to join our meeting tonight. We were looking forward to your update. And I do take note of the piece where you want to engage more. I mean, I know in some of our roundtable subcommittee meetings, we've been talking about resident to resident engagement, you know, to find out what some of the other development leaders are doing and to better engage in that way. Before we move on, Bart, do you have any comments before we move on?
No, I don't have anything specific because I do want to move on to make sure we preserve the time for others, but that was very helpful to know that the committees were being formed and getting to work. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, moving on with our
You're
agenda.
welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. We are looking forward to hearing from Chief Michael Thompson from FDNY. Mr. Thompson, you have the floor.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Thompson. Thank you for having me. I'm currently the liaison to New York City Housing with the FDNY. So we have revamped our key fob distribution system. It's now more streamlined. What I can tell you is since we have taken the necessary steps, changed messaging out to the members throughout the department, the reports of door damage made by FDNY units are significantly down currently from where they were in the past. We have completed a training video. This is required training for all members of the FDNY to take. We have pretty much revamped the whole distribution and reporting system. We're currently looking into working with NYCHA security and the monitor team, looking at possible receptacles for future door installation, just things that could improve the safety and security as far as door damages made by the FDNY. With that, we're currently working on distributing elevated machinery room keys to all members of the department, so those doors are not broken by members. And our goal moving forward is to not have to break any doors if we don't have to. Unfortunately, sometimes we do have to, and when that does happen, it happens. But we do have a system in place where notification is made immediately to the borough dispatcher. When that happens, notification is then made to New York City Housing Emergency. So we're trying to cut down on the time that if a door is broken, we can get that door repaired by New York City Housing. And I just want to thank everybody for allowing me to work with this team. It's really been, I could see we've made a lot of progress working together. So with that, that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Thompson. We appreciate that update. And also you mentioned the FDNY training video. I'm happy to share that with this group. offline, maybe in a follow-up email, because we would love to see that as well.
Okay. We could discuss it later on.
Awesome.
I just want to interrupt briefly, only to say thank you to the FDNY and Chief Thompson. It's really been a very good working relationship and continues to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And now we're moving on to Manoush. She's going to give us an update on the capital tracker. Manoush, you have the floor.
Thank you, Floretta. So some of you know, Capital team has been working on an enhanced capital tracker. I believe it's going to launch next month, so coming up. They have been conducting testing user sessions with different groups, including the Community Advisory Committee group, the Resident Roundtable, and CCOP. I attended one of those sessions, and the feedback received has been insightful and thoughtful, and they're currently conducting more tests with the NYCHA staff and also considering sorting through the feedback received to see what is doable, what is, what can be implemented. So they're going through that process now. So there will definitely be more to share at future meetings.
Thank you, Manoush. We appreciate that update. Samantha Rogers, you are up.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here and give a brief update on roundtables, subcommittee, safety and security subcommittee of the resident roundtable. I'd like to speak about 3 pilots that the safety and security subcommittee is monitoring. And then also just give a brief update on mental health and referrals and how we deal with mental health at NYCHA. I am a part of a larger umbrella department at NYCHA, and it is the Resident Services Department, Resident Services Participation and Initiatives Department, and one of the departments under that umbrella is Family Partnerships, and they are the department that deal directly in relation to mental health. And so with that said, we are working with the Family Partnerships Department as well as our Resident Health Initiatives Department to schedule a webinar on Mental Health 101, if you will. And so we are working with our partners at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to put together this Mental Health 101 type of training session for resident association leadership. Resident association leadership meaning the full boards. So not just the presidents or the vice presidents, but the full boards. And this session is meant to give an overview of how to maybe spot a mental health crisis and also how to respond or not respond, right? As a resident, right, when you are faced with someone who may be facing a mental health crisis. So we are working on that. May happens to be Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we are conducting this webinar on May 24th. And so we have discussed this with resident leadership groups, and they have given us the kind of go ahead because we've been asked about this a lot. On the NYCHA side, again, that department that handles mental health crises or mental health situations at NYCHA is the Family Partnerships Department. And that department is broken up into 4 units. It is the clinical unit. There's a unit called Supportive Outreach Services, another one called Elderly Safe at Home, and then Family Reentry. All 4 of these units sit under Family Partnerships. But the critical unit is the unit that deals directly with referrals made for maybe a resident that may be referred because they are suffering from a mental health crisis. And so these referrals are made, maybe another resident has referred, or maybe they self-referred, right? And so what this unit will do is then conduct an investigation and then refer for services with any of our partner agencies. I also would invite and suggest that there's a lot more, right, that they do, and a lot more in the way of mental health, even down to addressing hoarding and cluttering situations where it affects, right, the safety and quality of life of others. If you would like for that department to come in and give a presentation, they are more than willing to do so. They have already given a presentation to our CCOP and to our resident roundtable, and I think that residents at large are asking for this service because we hear it a lot. So that's all I will say on that because, of the time. In regard to safety and security in the roundtable, the 3 pilots that the roundtable is monitoring at this time is the e-bike storage and charging stations that will be launched soon. So we know that there has been several instances in NYCHA and outside of NYCHA, just across New York City, with fires and unfortunately fatalities caused by fires due to e-bikes. And so NYCHA, in partnership with Con Ed, is going to install e-bike safety storage and charging stations at 4 developments as a pilot program. Those developments are Queensbridge North, Queensbridge South, De Hostos in Manhattan, and in Van Dyke in Brooklyn. And we're going to monitor that program to make sure that, one, that the e-bikes are safely stored, are not, getting stolen, and people are comfortable storing the e-bikes there, and then they can be charged safely. And we'll look at the numbers and see if, this is a viable program to continue it across other developments, and if fires, have decreased. Another program that we are monitoring in the roundtable is the installation of Amazon lockers at NYCHA developments. We've been talking to Amazon about the theft of packages within NYCHA. And so it makes good business sense and safety sense, right, to install Amazon lockers at NYCHA developments to cut down on the theft of packages. It reduces the need to resend packages. It reduces frustration on the part of NYCHA residents, and also, reduces costs, of course, for Amazon. So that's another pilot that we will be monitoring closely from a resident standpoint. And then the last but not least one thing that came out of Roundtable last year was the installation of higher security gates at parking lots to cut down on the amount of resident cars that are being stolen from parking lots at NYCHA. And one larger gate was installed at a development in Manhattan, and we are monitoring that program closely. So far, the feedback has been that car theft has gone down to 0 in that lot. And so now the next step is to see if we can, get the installation of these gates in a broader scale and monitor that out further. And so those are my updates.
Floretta, can you hear me?
Yep, I was muted. I was thinking, Samantha, those are great updates, and we know that mental health support is very important, and it's a hot topic among our residents, and also safety and security is probably the biggest issue. So thank you for touching on those areas for us and giving us that information. I'm sure there'll be lots of follow-up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to add, as far as the mental health issues, that's certainly not a NYCHA problem. That's a city problem, or even much broader. And I know in our company, the monitorship, our company is called Guidepost Solutions. And in our company, we, I guess it was last week, we had essentially what was a seminar on mental health, what to look for, what to look to yourself if you think you need help, how to get help, what to do. And it's very important thing for all of us to pay attention to.
Absolutely. So thank you. And And that pretty covers our first half of the agenda, and we are on to our Q&A portion of the meeting. I mentioned that you would use the chat feature to let us know if you want to speak to the Federal Monitor team. Patricia and Chase, as I said, are waiting. They've been chatting with you throughout. So far, they'll get you moved over into the room. We especially want to encourage our Manhattan residents. We are trying to line you up first, but if you guys are shy and just kind of want to wait, if we have to bounce around to the other boroughs, we will do so. But please let us know that you want to speak to us, and we'll get you moved over. So Patricia, if you will, can you announce the first speaker?
Yes, thank you, Floretta. Ms. Hodge from Frederick Samuel Houses, she's our first speaker. Is she still? Yes, she's still here. Thank you, Ms. Hodge, for your patience. If you can unmute, you can direct your comments and questions directly to the monitoring team.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm a resident of Frederick E. Samuel Houses, and I suffers with bronchitis and I suffers with mental health. I've been going through different challenges and different things in my apartment, especially last year when the rats was in the walls in the building, and I understand that this building is converted over to rat, but there was no emergency for residents in these conditions, and it makes people's health worse than what they already had started with. I have mold in the kitchen in the window. I had mold in the bathroom. The flies, the bugs is still in the apartment. I'm using money to buy stuff to kill just to have a peace of mind in here. And it seems like no one really care or have concern of people's health well-being. And that's pretty much my concern tonight is, what do we do when people suffers with health issues and there's no plan B for them and they have to live in these conditions?
I'd like to try to respond to some part of, at least part of the question, because I think you raise an even larger point than the specifically what's happening with your apartment. The HUD agreement doesn't cover RAD and PACT once the building becomes RAD or PACT, but it does cover it while the building is still a part of NYCHA, and because of some abuses conducted by NYCHA, the court in the Baez case has broadened NYCHA's responsibility to ensure that care is taken after the turnover to the developer. So one of the things that we look out for, even though we can't do anything if it's already RAD or PACT, or we can do very little, what we look out for is that when a building is in the process or everybody knows it's going to go RAD or PACT, it still gets attention that it deserves. It's not abandoned because it's getting off the books. So that is something we can do, and we'll send somebody from our team, the team that Dan talked about earlier, mostly former detectives and members of the NYPD. We will send someone there and also look at Maximo and get a sense of whether the effort to keep things as clean as possible and as safe as possible were slowed as it goes into RAD or PACT. And as with all of the things that we hear from residents, although we don't run things day to day. In fact, the HUD agreement says we're not permitted to run anything day to day, and our focus is primarily on things that impact as many people as possible. Whenever we get a complaint of your kind, or a resident contacts us, we follow up with NYCHA with that complaint. We may not be able to do the work, but we ask questions. We make sure it gets to the right people, and we'll do that as well for you.
And thank you, Ms. Hodge. We will follow up. I do have your information and I would like to follow up and you get a little bit more detail so we could reach out to someone on your behalf. Thank you for your comment. Patricia, who's up next, please?
Yes, Ms. Quinones, I apologize if I did not pronounce your name correctly, but you're up next. You can unmute and ask your questions and express your concerns.
Quinones, how are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Bart, it's always a pleasure seeing you and Dan. How
Hi.
are you guys? It's been a minute. You know, it's really been a minute.
Been a lot of minutes.
Yes, and we need to do another meeting, but there's some points of everything that you guys have mentioned. First of all, wanted to comment on the vents. The vents in Douglas have not been done. My venters, forget about it. That hasn't been done. So maybe you could look into that for Douglas houses.
We will.
See where that is going there. This is directed to Thomas. Yes, FDNY. Can you make that training video available to different NYCHA developments so that we can show our residents? Is that a possibility?
I'll speak to that because the CAC committee, our community advisory committee, we've been working really closely with the fire department on this particular issue. The training video that was mentioned, we can't share only because it was like proprietary for fire department training. But I'm hoping, Chief Thompson, can you at least talk more about what's in the video so we could, everybody could better understand it?
Absolutely. So the training video is something internal that working with the committee, we knew we needed to make some improvements on our end, the fire department. So what we did was we basically described and we showed, because remember, not all members of the department are familiar with the layered access control doors. So working with safety and security, we were able to get key fobs for the entire, for every fire unit throughout the city. And those key fobs are they're programmed and they're good in all 5 boroughs, in all facilities. Any layered access control door, it's like a master key. So a lot of our units, if you didn't have any in your area, you were unaware of it. So what would happen a lot of times when you would have a response, a unit would arrive and the officer was unaware that, you know, that specific building required a key fob to get in. If they're there for an emergency, they would wind up breaking a door. If nobody answered, you know, a lot of times we're able to get in the building just by knocking or knocking on a window. So the video basically helps educate our members on the steps that we've taken as a group to improve. It shows the use of the key fobs, where you can get access to new key fobs. We've also created a redundant system where every battalion is issued 3 spare keys, and those are loaner keys. So if a unit so happens to lose a key or breaks a key or their keys aren't working, they make notification to the battalion provides spare keys. This way, no unit is ever without an active working key fob. We also improved our reporting system. So in the video basically explains what now is required by all FDNY officers upon completion of any broken door within New York City housing, they're required, we created a form, and that form has it's a lot of drop downs, and click, then there's a little section for a narrative. It gets uploaded and it goes to fire operations. Now, fire operations is aware. The borough dispatchers get notified immediately upon forced entry, and the notification is made to New York City Housing Emergency. So this way, there is no real lag in a broken door. You know, if we break the door, we want to make sure that that door gets secured as fast as possible. And again, if we break a door inside a dwelling, we do request for PD. But we do not just leave. If we cannot secure a door, we don't just leave. We don't. That's not standard operating procedure for the fire department. So we've created a lot of different systems, and this video is now actually just received it today. We're starting the required training for all members moving forward. Every member of the department is going to be required to sit and have and view the video and be a part of this training. We're also looking into the FDNY has something called Annual Education Day, and that's once a year. Units come out to the Bureau of Training, and they're given updated education on, you know, a myriad of different things. Usually it's hot topics and things that are new. So what we're going to look into is incorporating some of these improvements and the NYCHA layered access control doors into our annual education day. So this way, everyone's aware. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask.
When you say safety and security, what do you mean by that? Whose safety and security do you report to?
Safety and security?
Yeah.
So we have, there's a committee. It's the Safety and Security Committee, and we meet every 2 weeks, and it's members of the monitor team. It's members of New York City Housing, the NYPD. So we work with one another to figure out ways to make improvements. And that's really, you know, working together has definitely, because I've seen the reports of door damage decrease significantly since we started making these, you know, having some of these initiatives. So
well, in a way that's good, because you guys should be paying for these doors the way you do. I tell you, you have done Douglas so bad, it's horrible the way you've done Douglas. And I, to tell you the truth, I really believe NYCHA shouldn't be paying for it. Y'all should pay for that. Y'all break it, y'all should pay for it. But I'm gonna go on with that. Bart, I would like to know about that committee, and if any resident or presidents can attend, it'd be great. And I'm gonna go on because I just got a couple of things that I wanted to talk. The roundtables, the subcommittees that you mentioned. When are those done? When are those happening?
So the NYCHA subcommittee meetings happen once a month. And those meetings are not public meetings. Those meetings are comprised of roundtable members who meet.
And who are the roundtable members?
So I can actually send you an email with all of the roundtable members, but an easy way. And I'll also put this in the chat. If you go online to nyc.gov /roundtable, or if you Google NYCHA roundtable, it'll come up. But I'm gonna put a direct link right now in the chat so that you can find the list of who the current roundtable members are and which neighborhoods they cover. They're all
I'm gonna put my email. Please send it to me. I would like that directly.
Definitely get it.
I
Absolutely.
would really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'm almost done, ladies. Family partners.
Yes.
And supportive outreach, because I have a lot of mental illness, right? How can we get you guys to come to our meetings, right? To make this a little bit more public, so that the residents know that they have somewhere to go.
I will send you the correct information for that as well.
I love you already. Okay. The Amazon lockers, I've already had some people reach out to about the Amazon lockers, because a lot of the Amazon people, they just leave it at the door and keep it moving. And a lot of, I've lost a lot of stuff behind that myself. Okay,
Mhm.
just one more, which is that. Okay, the mental
One,
illness.
just one more, just
Yeah,
one.
just one more, maybe, just one
We have
more.
a long way to go.
Just-
Go ahead.
Just one more. The training for the full board, how is that? What is that? Training?
The mental health,
Yeah,
we will be sending out invitations for it, and it's a webinar via Zoom, and we're gonna be sending out invitations for it. And you would register for it ahead of time. And then you get a reminder to let you know, but I can follow up with you directly to make sure you're in it.
I
And make
appreciate
sure
that.
that you got the email.
Great. Bart, we need a meeting as soon as possible. Okay? You look good.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Appreciate you always. And back to Chief Thompson, anytime we hear there's a video, all we have to hear is video. We want to see it. And especially when talking about fobs and door locks and the progress being made. So we will definitely talk online and follow up with this group as to what's in it and how it can be beneficial.
Yeah, so maybe if we do have,
Great interest to people, so we will definitely follow up with you.
okay, sounds great.
Thank you so much. I have been chatting with Patricia and Chase, and I know that Miss Glover is up next. Miss Crystal Glover, if you unmute, and just give us your comment or question. Miss Glover, are you? Let me see if I can help unmute you.
Hi,
There you go. We can hear you. How are you?
I want to thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining.
I'm gonna try not to be long-winded. I'm not a president. This is Washington Houses.
Yes.
But I'm a former president.
Mhm.
And I know that the district councils, when they used to have the meetings, the presidents used to go and you get information to bring back to your tenants. Because a tenant association is not there to gather up a bunch of information and keep it to themselves. According to the bylaws, according to Washington Houses bylaws, every month, every officer, whether they're the treasurer, secretary, they're supposed to give a monthly report to the tenants. They're supposed to have a monthly meeting. If they're not going to have a meeting, they should post to let the tenants know. We had an election here back in November 29th of 2021. I ran for financial secretary. Everybody that ran got in unopposed because not one tenant came out to vote. And what ended up happening when I contacted the resident engagement because I asked the president if I could have a list information about the financial doings and how they've been either spending the money or whatever they're doing. And resident engagement told me that they were going to take it to the legal department. They gave the board 30 days and on and on and on, and nothing ever happened. And so as far as I'm concerned, CCOP, even the lead person, Lakeisha Smith, when Chandrea was there, Chandrea had to reprimand her because she cut me off of a meeting and all I was doing was asking a question. So I'm going to wrap it up because I forget the sister's name, the host, not you, ma'am, with the ponytail at the top, the other lady who respectfully lets me speak. I have a lot to say because I have to be concerned about my safety, number one. Safety is very important to me. And what's happening at my development, we have political leaders who have taken our tenant associations hostage, and they are working with the board. We're not getting any information. When the board meetings, when the tenant meetings happen monthly, which they didn't really start back happening until I spoke about it at a PSA meeting. When I asked the officer, how many developments have you been to? This was like in January. How many meetings have you been to, right? Because that's what the PSA does. They go to board meetings to bring information, not board meetings, but tenant association meetings, to bring information so that we don't have to go to the community council meetings that the PSA give. So I have a lot to talk about because I'm very stressed. My safety is in jeopardy because I'm going to speak up. CCOP only deals with the presidents. All these committees and we went to Albany and all. Guess what? None of that information is getting to the tenants. And so I know I have to shut down.
No,
But I'm telling you,
what
I went to the field person. I contacted someone at HUD. Okay, he speaks to me. And I guess if I would have said to him, my TA is stealing our 117,000, maybe he would have complied and did something. But Crystal Glover don't run around talking about TA stealing because that will be false. Because when I looked at the chart, the budget, the TPA budget was posted to me by Yuka Vasquez, because I asked her about the TPA money, because the board don't tell us nothing. This same board has been in there for over 5 years, and they have never presented a report, monthly reports. We don't know how much money we got in there. The only reason why I know, because I went to TPA budget. I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna shut up.
No. I don't want you to shut up, but this is
Okay.
Loretta. I do remember that in one of our last meetings that you had raised some of these issues and we responded. And I think you and I talked offline as well. It sounds like you're still dealing with the same issues, but I'm happy to follow up with you offline because I do have information for you. I know that you followed up with HUD, you spoke to Sherrod, and you also had some safety issues and election voting items.
Fraud, go ahead.
So there was a few items that were on your list. And I think that we can get a lot accomplished with a follow-up call, okay?
I even spoke to Barbara one time, and he was talking to the president in the office, and they were manipulating, talking about, oh yeah, say that she don't like, I heard it, they didn't know I was out there listening. Say that the kids don't like her. Say that you see where I'm going with this? And I'm gonna tell you something. God don't love ugly, but guess what? Just like Medea said, God worked too slow, okay? So, like Medea said, I'm gonna shut up respectfully because I respect you. I respect you.
I hear you.
But I'm telling you, my safety is in jeopardy.
We're going to follow up with you because I hear every word you're saying.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna count anything.
I believe you too.
But I do have some
You're
follow-up
one of the
for
few.
you.
You're one of the few that I believe.
For you. So we're
You're
gonna
one of the few.
leave
You're
it
one
there.
of the few. You're one of the few.
We're gonna
that I
leave it.
believe.
We're gonna leave it there so we can get to some of the other residents.
Loretta,
Thank you.
Follow
Thank
up.
you.
Loretta, we should also follow up. We should also
I
follow up with
promise you,
Sherrod.
okay? But
Thank you.
You always have some valuable things to say. So and I have them all written down. But we will be talking. We'll be talking, if not tonight, first thing tomorrow.
Now,
Thank
Loretta,
you,
we
ma'am.
should follow up with Sherrod as well.
For
because
sure.
He's got familiarity. Not only does he often have familiarity with the facts, he has an excellent understanding of what the rules say.
Especially with the PTS,
Yes.
TPA stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Crystal.
You're welcome.
All right, so we will move forward with the next resident. Patricia, can you help me? Who's up next?
Yes, it is Mr. Betancourt. He's from Manhattan. Mr. Betancourt, can you please unmute?
And I see you're on screen.
You're on screen. Can you please unmute?
Let me see if I can help you. You're still muted. Oh, there you go.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going through a very difficult period, at White Houses. I'm the TA president of Gaylord White Houses in East Harlem. And the issue is about security. And it's about the front entrance doors, which I'm sure is a very common theme by now among all of the developments and all the TA presidents. This door has been breached so many times. We're actually entering our 4th year with the doors being open 24/7. Recently, we got NYCHA to replace the closers. At a meeting with Congressman Espaillat, we put forth the idea that the closers should be covered so that people don't remove the screws that allow the closers to work. And so we got that far and we got that to happen, and it's been great. But it only lasted a week, because then the cylinder in the front entrance door doesn't work. So they removed the cylinder. It's been 3 weeks. We've been waiting for them to replace the cylinder. It took 4 years for them to replace the closers. But why is it taking forever to replace a simple cylinder? I mean, I would put the money forth for the cylinder. Can anybody explain to me why it's so difficult to replace a cylinder?
Well, I don't know if we can explain what's wrong with the system. That's something we can follow up on, but we also will directly follow up with your issue and ask about that in particular. The procurement system has actually improved. You may not have seen it, and because it hasn't happened for you, but overall, they've actually improved their ability to get parts, to get them on time, to have them available, to get more contracts, and to do a better job of procurement, which should speed the system, shouldn't be the source of the problem. But we'll ask. We'll ask, and we'll get back to you.
I'd appreciate that very much, because we had, people getting scammed in the building. Old ladies are being scammed out of their life savings. I mean, somebody was trying to break into my apartment at 1 o'clock in the morning. And, those issues wouldn't happen. We have people coming in from the streets, using our stairwells to sleep in, and of course, to do their, whatever their needs are. And I mean, it's just terrible all around. It's just disgusting and terrible. We shouldn't have to be going through that. We're seniors, we pay rent, we're entitled to service, and we're demanding it.
And we agree with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Betancourt, I know you mentioned that it's been out for years, but then it was repaired, and the repair only lasted just a little bit. Is it vandalism why the doors are broken in the first place? And
there are 2 reasons why. I don't want to disparage the fire department, because they were my heroes since I was a little tot. But sometimes it's, somebody gets stuck in an elevator. The doors are locked when they were locked, because they're now open 24/7. And of course, they have to break the doors to get in to rescue whoever is having an emergency. Or maybe there's a resident who became ill and called, the EMT. And they have to get into the building. That's understandable. That's not vandalism. But I would say that 80% is vandalism. Another 5% is just, wear and tear. And just to be, on the right side with my fire department, 5% maybe is when the fire department has to break the door down. I'm not sure about those statistics, but that's what I would think.
That's what you see. Thank you. Thank you. We will definitely follow up. Chief Thompson, did you want to respond?
Yes, so sir, that's not a layered, just from listening to you speak about the door. That is not a layered access. That's a standard key lock, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we have discussed working with NYCHA, the fire department, moving forward, obtaining keys, hard keys for every development throughout the 5 boroughs. So
Yes,
every
sir.
first, so again, this isn't going to be perfect because I was actually a firefighter right there about 15 years ago. But it's a work in progress. It's not going to be perfect. There are times where we are going to have to force the door because, say, companies are out of fire and there's and relocated units come in. They don't have access to those keys. So, but that will drastically reduce. That should drastically reduce the amount of damage that's done to standard operating doors. And we are currently working on that with New York City Housing.
Loretta, can I ask a question? Mr. Betancourt raised a interesting angle here, and I'm wondering, Michael, did you consider EMT in the training and the protocols that we put in place, that you put in place for FDNY? Does that include EMTs?
So EMTs, I'm in fire operation. It's a little bit separate. So I'm fire operations. EMS is EMS operations. But what I can tell you is that anytime an EMS unit needs access, we receive a call, and that call is for a fire unit for it, and the response comes in as gain entry. So when we receive that response, we know that we're going to arrive. There's going to be an ambulance on scene, and then they need us to break the door down. So it could be something that we could look into, maybe discussing with the chiefs in fire operations could discuss with EMS operations, maybe outfitting each EMS station with those keys also.
Good, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Edna. You're on mute, Floretta.
Sorry.
I'm so happy to be able to say that to you instead of you saying it to me.
We are going to follow Mr. Betancourt. Thank you so much, sir. And I just have to make the comment that you have your own resident meeting going on in your apartment where you are, and it's a great view that all of you are joining our meeting for strong in one screen. So appreciate the participation. And again, we look forward to following up with you. And so next up, I believe we have Christine Bookin, who's been waiting patiently. Christine, if you would go ahead and unmute, introduce yourself, and give us your comments, please.
Good evening. My name is Christine Bookin. I'm currently the president over at Campos Plaza 2 on Manhattan's Lower East Side. We have many problems over here, but I just want to discuss one because I need to know how to handle this problem the next time it arises. Last week, one of our tenants around 11:30 p.m. called me screaming that she had a rodent in the apartment. I assumed that it was a mouse. So I went upstairs with my can to try to catch it for her, unaware that in her bathroom, sitting in her bathtub, was a large rat looking at me and cleaning itself from being soaking wet because it entered through the toilet. So I told her, and I closed the bathroom door. I said, well, this is definitely no mouse. Let me see who I could call. I called all the numbers I could possibly can, and unfortunately, there was nobody in NYCHA that can assist me. They told me there is nobody on the staff that could handle a live rodent. So eventually, the rodent was taken care of course, not by NYCHA. So my question to you is, why isn't there someone on staff in emergency services that can handle a large live rodent to be removed from an apartment?
That's a good question.
Well, it's a very good question and one we'll ask. I don't, I'm surprised. I must say I'm surprised at that you got that response.
Emergency services. I went
believe
through
you.
every line.
I'm sure that's what happened, but that's really is a surprising answer, and we'll ask that question about what kind of night coverage they have for various contingencies.
Okay, I really appreciate that because I need to know how to handle that next time around. I thought this woman was going to have a heart attack. Now, you have a lot of people that do have phobias. I'm not one of them. I don't have those kind of phobias with animals. The rat did not scare me, okay? But I did seal the bathroom door until we could get somebody there because it was a very large rodent and she had a very large space under her bathroom door. And this is a woman who's very clean. She's never had rodents in her apartment in the 40 years that she's been in this apartment. And this sucker came swimming up through the toilet. And she lives on the 9th floor, which is the last floor in this building.
And how did it end, Ms. Booking?
Oh, we had to call somebody in the family from another borough. Thank God they had a car to come. By the time they got here, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. They came with a large receptacle and was able to put the rodent into that receptacle and take it out.
Okay. Yeah,
I felt terrible, that NYCHA was not able to assist.
Yeah.
Emergency services was not able to assist. 311 laughed and they were not able to assist.
So did they tell you if the rodent had been dead, they could come and remove it?
No.
So it was just the rodent.
Yes.
Dead
They just did not have any. Listen, if it was a dead rodent, the calls would have never been made. I would have removed the rodent myself for her. No problem.
Okay.
My
Right.
can was not big enough for this rodent. That's how big the rodent was.
Wow.
I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah.
I've dealt with them before.
Well, thank you, Ms. Bookin. We'll certainly follow up and find out, what is the process, the procedure for emergency services for something like that. I agree with you that you should be able to make a phone call and someone respond.
Yeah, I do have a number for her. We were able
Yes.
to get a number to.
Are you able to put that detail, or I can reach out to
Oh,
you?
don't
Reach
put
out-
that in
you-
the chat.
No, you can
Out
reach
to
out
you.
to me through
Yeah.
my email.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll send you an email and then I'll get the details from you and we can.
Okay,
follow
no
up.
problem.
Thank you for letting us know about that.
Okay, and I'm sure it'll be helpful for everybody else.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next is Terry Capuzano. If you could unmute. And present your comment. Thank you. You're still muted. There
All
you go.
right. My comments were basically about the call center and the confusion that it's causing the tenants along with the skilled trade people. Both of those seem to be having a lot of confusion for the tenants. What happened with the appointments that we used to have at NYCHA, where the tenants would make an appointment with the call center for them to come out? Because I'm getting a lot of complaints from the tenants that they were told that maintenance people would come out and check the apartment or do the repair, and nobody is showing up. I'm getting this every day from the tenants. We also have a rodent problem in the back, but not as bad as it used to be. There is a rodent person department for NYCHA. Unfortunately, I don't have the number with me, but if anybody needs it, they could just reach out to me at miguel1025@aol.com. We also have a security problem. We have the rent-a-guards at night. And just like they're working in Rite Aid, they're being told by their bosses not to get involved. So they let people into the building and there's no structure with this security. Whereas they should be taking names, checking IDs, finding out what apartments that people are going to, instead of just letting people that don't belong in the building.
Mr. Campuzano, what development are you in?
Meltzer Tower, we're a senior resident in the
Okay.
Lower East Side.
Thank you.
There's a lot of people that are in the building that don't belong there, but I've noticed that management is starting to get them out, which is a good thing, because
Yeah.
we're a senior building and we have a lot of people, there's not only in a senior building, do you probably have a high turnover, but people are dying or have died or put their loved one or supposedly loved one in a home, in a rehab, and they're taking over the apartments. But I see that Gompers is starting to crack down on it.
And I just want to understand, now that I know it's a senior building, you mentioned the call center, you're not, you're calling and asking for help or repairs or what have you, and there's no status, no follow-up? Are they?
No, you know what it is the call center will tell you, okay, somebody will be there tomorrow. But then you have the skilled trades and somehow, so the call center will tell you somebody's going to be there tomorrow and they don't show up. And the tenants are frustrated. They're calling NYCHA a bunch of liars, that the management is a bunch of liars. But the management, it's not so much the management as the structure of the call center, I think. So there's where the problem is. And I don't know if this is a skilled trade problem. I have one tenant that just needs spackling. These people are elderly. So they came to do the bottom part of her closet in her bedroom. So she had pillows and stuff on the shelf and that she couldn't reach. So I guess the person didn't want to help her, or it wasn't his place to help her get the stuff down. So now we're in May. So now they're telling her that they can't come back into October, which is insane. So she has all her stuff out on the bed.
No, I'm just trying, yeah, I understand. I was just trying to make the connection with call center versus how we enter that information into a work order process.
Well, part of this may be the system that they've changed. And Dan, and tell me if I'm right about this, but they're trying to put more responsibility on the resident to make calls and to make appointments.
Yeah, to work it out with the neighborhood planner.
Right, and I can understand where there can be confusion. So it's good that you've told us about this, because they need that kind of feedback to know that there's a problem.
Right. Okay. We will follow up with
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Patricia, I believe Princella Jamerson is up next. Mrs. Jameson, do you want to unmute and present your comment to the monitor team?
Hello, hi, good afternoon, rather good evening, everyone. So I was just listening to the gentleman that just spoke before me, and mine's have to do with the same thing that he's complaining about. So for a couple of months, I sat on the committee when they was forming the planning unit and stuff, how they was going to combat how they do skilled trades and giving more leverage to the residents to call in and make appointments where they can schedule everything at one time. So if they having plastering, they get the plastering, they get the painting, and whatever else that needs to be done is supposed to go one behind each other, but that's not what's happening. The problem is that the planning unit department don't have enough skilled trades workers in order to meet the demand that they are getting when these residents are making a 707 call. And then when they reach out to the planning unit, they are getting appointments for 2024. We in 2023. So
what development is this?
I'm from Millbrook.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm from Millbrook in the Bronx. And I just think that when they was carving out this new way of handling excess repairs, that it was a good idea on paper, but in reality is, you know, is falling back to where it used to be. When it first started out, it was moving like clockwork. You know what I'm saying? People was getting their appointments. They called the planning unit. You know, they was getting their appointments right away. But now it's like, it's taking so long. So I want to know what could, you know, y'all do in order to see what can be better done to help the planning unit. I think it's a good idea, but it just really needs a lot more help. It needs more structure. It needs more workers and staff in order for it to really work.
Yeah, I think you're right. I know they put a lot of effort into designing this new system, and they're you know, the hearts are in the right place. They really thought it would be more efficient, and it would work more. It would work better because, as you said, you could get all the trades in order to get the work done. But you're right. I think you're right that probably the biggest problem is not having enough skilled trades to be able to make the system work. They're keeping careful records on this, so we'll take a look at those and see and make sure they understand the complaints are out there. As I said to the last gentleman, that hearing this is very helpful to us because we can then deliver the message that it's maybe more widespread a problem than NYCHA realizes. If we're hearing it from all of you, and you're telling us, I saw in the chat that it's happening to others as well. So you know, I don't want them to think it's an isolated incident.
Right. And we're now narrowing it down to the last two speakers. Christina Chase, you can go ahead and present your comment and question. Thanks for being so patient.
No problem. Good evening. I mean, I just want to second what Princella was saying. So many of the residents and staff, especially at the management office, don't understand how the neighborhood planning unit works. Residents will come in asking, and literally they'll just take down your name and say someone will call you back, and no one calls. And so we're not getting the repairs that we need. And so I'm asking if you can mandate NYCHA to do the necessary training for staff at the management office to properly assist residents with their repair appointments, especially for the skilled trade repairs. And having, especially for folks, the older folks who, and folks with health issues, a lot of these specialized repairs need to happen in a timely manner because they can you know, foster health issues like having exposed walls, and or not having the right pipes in place. There's just so many little things that you might have one repair done, but the contingent one you have to wait several months for.
Yeah.
And additionally, I just wanted to echo that the CCC does have a lot of glitches, including disconnecting calls after long waits, which is super frustrating. And sometimes the NYCHA app is down, so there is no avenue to submit a ticket. So then so I'm asking if there can be an investigation and to ensure that NYCHA resolve those glitches.
Yep.
But to the more specific questions, I wanted to express my appreciation for the moderator's comments on the Preservation Trust voting procedures. That was released in November 2022. And so my question is to the federal monitor, will you be monitoring for compliance with the Preservation Trust law regarding the board composition, as well as voting regulations and procedures? And my other question for you is, considering the residents across developments expressing their interest for water testing after discovering the arsenic contamination at Jacob Riis houses, first of all, what are the updates for Jacob Riis houses, and how can we work with the monitor to get NYCHA to test all of our water and provide us with that data?
Okay, so if your first specific question about the trust and the operation of the trust, frankly, that's not within the HUD agreement. We're limited. The agreement limits us to Title IX housing. We've expanded it in some areas. Originally, believe it or not, NYCHA fought us over including safety and security as part of our responsibility, but we said we can't do our job without paying attention to safety and security. But the operation of the trust is mandated by the legislation. And I know, for example, because I was on a call with some NYCHA people the other day, when for example, for the elections, for the voting, they are going to be hiring independent voting companies that have experience running these kinds of elections. But we're not going to be involved in that aspect of it. But from everything I've seen on the trust, it seems to me, maybe it's because it's legislation, it's been a little bit more open process than other things that NYCHA sometimes does. So look, if there's a problem, it's going to be important on the people to report the problem, and then someone is going to have to look at it. It could be, and this is part of this, maybe an answer to the second half of your question, which is Riis. I am eagerly awaiting the report from the Department of Investigation, which is actually a report that we are working on with them. But I have tried to stay out of that a bit and let my staff people work with DOI and do the report together, not to influence it anyway from my own perspective and things that I heard. So those DOI reports and I know that the one that we're doing with them on Riis always include recommendations. And one thing I will ask my colleagues who are working on it is if they are going to be including recommendations on how testing gets done when there are concerns, or what kind of testing gets done without there need to be a concern, but just safety kinds of testing. And I will ask them if they're gonna cover that in the report. Joe, is Joe Jaffe still on? So Joe.
Yeah, I'm still on.
Yeah, I know you can't comment. I don't want to put you in a bad spot. I know you can't comment on what you're doing in writing the report and the investigation, but maybe you can raise with those people you're working with whether you should have recommendations about testing.
Absolutely will.
Good, thank you. Joe is working. We've loaned him to the Department with several other people to the Department of Investigation to work on this report.
Yes. Thank you, Bart. Thank you, Chase, for your questions. We have one more speaker. Wayne B is on the line. Wayne, if you could unmute and present your comment to the monitoring team. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just sat back and just listened to, think about everything that everyone was saying. And I kind of do resonate with the doors. I resonate with trespassing. There's just so many different things that's been going on in development for the past 5 years, 6 years. And I've actually met you before, Mr. Swartz. I believe you had came to a Johnson Community Center for a town hall.
Yes.
And yes, so I really appreciate the work that you and your team is doing. But the same issues remain to be the same. And in our development, we have broken doors, broken mailboxes, and broken mailboxes to the point where they're not getting repaired, like they're not getting fixed at all. And I have residents that are coming to me complaining about not receiving packages. We also have the USPS postal boxes in our development where they put the keys in, where they put the individual keys inside of the mailboxes so the resident can be able to get the packages out of the parcel boxes. So if the mailboxes are broken, there's no way for them to get their packages or for them to have access to the parcel box. So that's been a big concern here. We have a lot of trespassing in Drew Hamilton. I have a lot of homeless people that come here. And it's really because the doors are wide open. Just like Mr. Bentecourt said, our doors are breached 24/7, front and back. So we have everyone coming to Drew Hamilton, everyone. We have teenagers, they come here to hang out on the staircases, and they're destroying our building, Bart. I mean, they're literally destroying our development. They're breaking the glass, they're breaking the doors, they're breaking just the doorknob. And I don't understand how someone that doesn't live in the development come here and just destroys it completely. I mean, what has the building done to anybody? The building hasn't done anything wrong to anyone. It's being destroyed by people. People are coming here breaking everything. I don't even know what's there left to even complain about on Bart. I've been advocating for different things for Drew Hamilton, and some things have taken place here, but it's still we're in really bad shape.
Yeah, the common element in everything you're talking about is safety and security, and primarily security. That's the common element, and the kinds of things that you're saying are exactly the arguments we made as to why we need to make it part of what we're doing.
Yes, and to add to that, Mr. Swartz, I am a part of the Safety and Security Subcommittee. I am on the Resident Roundtable as well. So I do add input, just like Ms. Rogers was saying earlier. We're trying to implement some things here, but it's being difficult because the NYPD, let's just say this, bail reform has created a chaotic city. This city is chaotic. We have marijuana now is legal, so no one feels like they are doing anything wrong. We have people smoking in the lobby of our buildings every single day, Bart. I have older senior citizens, like people that come to me, and they're telling me, Wayne, I don't feel safe here anymore. And I feel so bad for them because they don't ask for this. And these guys, and Bart, I'm not even exaggerating. There's 100 or more guys in my lobby every single day, hanging out in my lobby. When I say something to them, they're calling me faggot, they're calling me all type of gay, all type of names, and they're telling me, oh, you don't own this building, but I advocate on behalf of the residents. That's what I try to remind them. And I try to tell them, don't do this stuff here, go somewhere else. Take the smoking, take the gambling, take all of the hanging out and everything, go somewhere else. And I really feel like it put a lot of us as TA presidents, like our safety, it puts our safety in jeopardy because we're advocating on behalf of our residents and we're being disrespected day in and day out. And I really just think it's unfortunate. It's not fair, because we're selected. We was duly elected to represent our development, and the fact that we can't help the residents the way that we want to,
Right.
it's very unfortunate, very unfortunate. And I don't, I'm sorry, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining or anything. I just
No.
want something to be done about it, Bart. That's all.
No, we understand the frustration. One of the things that I've been talking to NYCHA about is that that at the central office, they should have trained people who can deal with a lot of these issues, because you can't really leave it to the everybody in the development. You're not trained to do this. It's not.
No.
The people who work there, they're afraid of these people, so you can't expect them to help. But if you have a trained group at central headquarters that knows what to do and this is their job, then I think it could help. We talked to Chief Secreto about it. We've talked
I've emailed Chief Secreto twice on 2 occasions. I've let him know about the things going on in Drew Hamilton.
Yeah.
I told Mr. Secreto, please come look at our doors. Just come to Drew Hamilton and do a whole assessment, sir. That's what I asked him. And don't you know, to this day, he has not responded. He has not even tried to just send a staff member out just to see what's going on, because, and I'm not blaming him for anything that's going on here, Bart. It's just the fact that if you are a part of the safety and security department, I really want the staff to really come out to the developments and see what it looks like. They don't know how breach doors look. They're just going by what we're telling them.
Yeah. Yep.
So
we'll follow up with you some more. We'll follow up with you some more about this.
Okay, and thank you so much, Mr. Swartz. I really appreciate you.
Sure.
I do.
Sure. Well, I know we ran over, but it was important, Floretta, I think, to get to these issues.
Of course. So it's very important. Thank you, Wayne, for letting us know, and I share your frustration as well. I do understand, and we will definitely follow up with you. And I'm so glad that you are serving on the Resident Roundtable Committee, because I know that we are talking about these issues all the time, and we are hoping that some positive change can come out of our discussions there. The monitor team is definitely represented in the main meetings and in the subcommittee meetings. And I see Asha, who is online with us, and she does serve on the Safety and Security Subcommittee, as well as the main committee. So we share a common interest there, to trying to see some remedy come to Drew Hamilton and the other developments. So thank you for taking the time to join us on tonight. You'll see on the screen that we do have some upcoming meetings on the calendar. We'll be in Queens, July 11, September 12th is for the Bronx, November 14th, Staten Island. And then, of course, as we always say, let's not wait for these meetings for you guys just to let us know what's going on at your development, good or indifferent. Just let us know. You can go to our website, NYCHAmonitor.com, to find our latest reports and to even contact us through that portal. You can also email us at monitor@NYCHAmonitor.com, or give us a call at 347-809-5555, or toll free at 844-309-6080. And
Could I say something quickly? Because we had an issue last week where someone emailed us, a resident emailed us about something serious to her several times, and we never got the email because there was a typo in the address. And if you're not getting a response from us, it's because try a phone or call the toll-free number, because we're looking to respond to everything that comes to us, and it would for you not to get a response to an email would be very much out of the ordinary. So don't think we're ignoring it. There may be a reason. Maybe we didn't get it, as with this other issue with something which I wish we had gotten when the woman first sent it.
Thank you, Bart. That's so important. And that brings us to our closing, Bart. You
Yep.
have the closing remarks.
No, I think we've covered a lot, and I don't think really I have anything to add. A lot of serious stuff to follow up to do from what we've heard today, and it's not one-off stories. I think it's more widespread, and we will follow up on all of those. So I know it's late and we ran over, but I think it was important to do so. Thank you, everyone, for our team and for all the